Hi guys, Calvatron here. Today I'm jumping into a little Assetto Corsa EVO update video. We're taking a look at the 0.4 update today, and I'm going to give you a little review. I've never really done this before, scripted video, but I've written a few things down that I'd like to speak about this new 0.4 update. I think it's a very big step in the right direction, and I think that if Kunos keep going this way, then it's going to be, this game's going to be huge in terms of sim racing. In the background you're going to see a little MX5 race that I'm doing around Suzuka, the shortened layout. It's a beginner race using their in-game rank system. First race I do end up with a win, sorry to spoil it, but it does kind of highlight where the game's going. You can see this MX5 Cup car doesn't use traction control, so you really have to balance the throttle and brake pedal and dance the car through the corners. But you'll see that throughout this video, so let's get right into this. One of the biggest updates in 0.4 is easily the track content. It's the largest track drop that we've had so far in ACE. And the fact that every circuit is fully laser scanned really shows that once you're out on track, you can feel the bumps, you can feel the curbs, you can feel everything, and it feels great. To me particularly, Monza stands out. It's the one that I've tested the most alongside the Nordschleifer. The new F1 kind of layout that they changed, I think at the beginning of 2024 now, that feels great. It's got the wider turn 1 and turn 2, which I don't think any other sim has at the moment, so definitely check that out. Which leads me on to my next point, which is the physics of the game. So there's a lot of physics in the 0.4 update. For me, one of the biggest improvements the sim has seen so far. The update kind of fundamentally changes how the cars feel at and beyond the limit, and I think it's a massive step forward. So if they keep going in this direction, then it's going to be, at one point it's going to feel like the best sim. I think at the moment that for me is Le Mans Ultimate, but that's obviously only GT3's LMP cars. But now the driving in this game, I'd say it feels intuitive. Before you kind of had to preemptively drive under the limit, because when you I suppose the tyre model before was kind of lackluster, and I think now the updated tyre model makes a massive difference. The grip breaks away from the cars a lot more progressively, so you see that in the MX5 here with no traction control, and when the cars start to slide you can actually feel what it's doing and respond to it. Corrections now make sense. Weight transfer feels way more believable, and saving the car feels like you earned it rather than you just got lucky, which I fear it kind of felt like before. So it still rewards smooth inputs, good corner entry, exit, all the normal things that will make any racer fast. But now it feels like you're kind of in tune with the car more, get up out, and not that the car's fighting against you at every possible moment. So traction under braking and on corner exit is noticeably improved as well. You can lean on the tyres a lot more confidently, and I think the car communicates when you're approaching the limit a bit more. So, especially it's a good example here. It's a very long right-hander. You can lean on that outer wall of that tyre a lot more, I think, without the car braking traction, and you can push the limit of the car without going over the limit and not feeling it, whereas before I think you'd go over the limit a bit like in iRacing, how you go over the limit and you just don't feel it until the car's already in a slide and then you can't catch it. Whereas now that updated tyre model, that updated damping model with the suspension, everything like that, you see I have a couple of slides on the exit of turn 1 there, I suppose it's turn 1 or turn 2, and I can just drive into the slide and catch it, and it feels a lot better. That guy couldn't, obviously. So the force feedback feels a lot better too. I did have a big tinker with the force feedback, and I turned down the road effects, slip effects, damping effects, everything like that, and I've lent more into the audio based force feedback. So I haven't seen that in other sims. It might be systems in other sims that I don't know about, but the force feedback is reactive based on the audio, so going over curbs, sausage curbs, things like that, all impacts the force feedback, and it feels like a lot better now. It doesn't feel disconnected from the car and disconnected from the tyres. It doesn't feel there, it doesn't feel great, but it's definitely more comparable to the original Assetto Corsa, which I think has got some of the best force feedback in sim racing. So you get a lot more usable information rather than kind of vague resistance like you do with the F1 games and things like that. So Overall, the update in terms of physics is a really good step in the right direction, and it's something you kind of had to work around before, and now it's something you can work with, I think. It feels natural, responsive, way more in line with what you'd expect from an actual modern sim racing game, and not a project that's being worked on. So for me, apart from the tracks, which are really nice to have, I think the physics aspect of the 0.4 update is the best thing for me. It's the physics. But before we stop our discussion on the physics, I want to talk about the tyre temperature behaviour, which was a big thing that I noticed, especially when I went out on the Nordschleife in the SF25 F1 car. You can see my sister going into the room there. Just ignore her. She's messing around with my new dog. Shout out to Ted. But tyres now retain temperature a lot more consistently. They also cool down properly when you back off, so you can feel the difference after a mistake or a movement when you're overdriving. If you give the tyres a couple corners of better inputs and more consistent and gradual inputs, they recover instead of staying cooked, which they did before. The heat build up in the tyres feels more gradual, and you can see from the bottom right, the tyre UI section, that the heat comes from the inside of the tyre and then dissipates out to the outside, which you'd see in real life. And you can see it going down the straight. The two right tyres might need the temperatures dropped a bit so they can, or raised I suppose, I don't really know how setups work. So the temperature changes make a lot more sense, and they're relative to how hard you're pushing the car rather than the how hard you were, because they never came down before. So this feeds directly into the slide behavior. So when you do slide, drift or lock up the car, you feel the consequences in the temperature and the grip, and it's no longer a permanent penalty. The tyre model kind of feels like it's simulating real heat cycles rather than just flipping a switch into an overheated state, which you'd find in the original Assetto Corsa. An example of this is, take a F1 car or a high downforce car, it doesn't have to be an F1 car, around the Nordschleife, go around that section with the YouTube corner, everything like that really fun section, which is my favourite part, and then drive down the big long straight after that. You'll see in the original Assetto Corsa, the tyre temperatures will not really come down past a certain point, and they'll stay hot, whereas in this they pretty much lose a lot of their temperature, a lot of their operating temperature, and those next few corners, going into the Nürburgring GP circle or back round again for another lap in the Nordschleife, you'll definitely feel a difference with those tyres. So overall, I'd say tyre temperature management is a lot less frustrating, and it's a lot more intuitive now. It encourages smoother driving experience, and smarter pace management, instead of just punishing you indefinitely for one mistake you might have made 10 corners ago. So it's a very subtle change, but it makes a big difference, and it makes an actual race stint feel a lot better, which I could feel in this race. So the next point to discuss is the graphics. In this new update, they state in their patch notes they've made a clear push towards visual clarity and quality. So among what they've changed, car paint materials have been changed, lighting, post-processing and motion rendering, which I actually don't really know what that means, a lot cleaner, notably smoother, operate better at speed. Cockpit visuals are a lot sharper, reflections behave more naturally, and there's updated car models on the MX-5 Cup, which I'm driving now, Hurricane ST Evo 2 and the Porsche GT4 MR Cayman. They all benefit from higher material fidelity. On paper, there's also some performance optimizations, including reduced VRAM usage, which always comes greatly appreciated with this age of unoptimized games, better efficiency in crowded scenes. So I did notice, even in this race, my FPS normally drops along the main areas with crowds like here, but I did feel as if my FPS remained a lot more stable. However, it does highlight where my 3060 Ti, which is what I'm currently running as my graphics card, starts to struggle. So I run the game at 1440p, and whether it's a combination of these improved post-processing materials, cutscenes, all of these things, or whether it's just the actual state of the game itself. Obviously it's a very pretty game, as you can see, it looks great, but I am running DLSS upscaling, so my frames, I do think they should be a lot higher for what they are, especially as the game is now running at a reduced resolution, and is upscaling it. I think that the frames could still improve from where they are. I want to see maybe like a 20-30% increase from what they actually are. But to kind of contradict, the optimizations are there, and they do help. They do help in this build, I'll give it that, but I do think there's still a lot of movement and a lot of work they need to do on the optimizations to bring it towards what it's capable of in this new engine, especially because we're going to have a massive open world at one point, and it's going to need to run well, or else no one's going to be able to drive it apart from those with 5090s and things like that. So step in the right direction, but still a lot of work to do. So if we're going to give update ratings, I'd give the graphics 6 out of 10 on the upgrade scale, with the physics and everything being like a 9, and the tracks being a 10 because they're great tracks. But the next point is the HUD and the UI. So 0.4, it continues to expand and modernize the ACE UI, adding new HUD elements, refreshed leaderboards, a cleaner server list, and features like the multiplayer chat widget, expanded MFD, and new track maps. So it is a clear step towards. It's a good step forwards in terms of functionality and information. But that being said, the UI still has a lot of work to do, and for me personally, it doesn't feel great. I'm not the biggest fan of it, and I think it would benefit from maybe a rework at one point. So to get a bit nitpicky, one of the biggest issues I have, it is small, but it is an issue, because when you're looking at replays and things like that, and there's no telemetry available, is the pedal input UI on the bottom right. The animations are not smooth at all, and then when you look at the wider UI as well, the animations just aren't smooth. It feels like it's running at like 12 FPS or something compared to the rest of everything. There's a noticeable disconnect between what the car is actually doing and what the UI is showing. It feels like there's almost a delay. So I'd like to see that change, definitely. So obviously we're sim racing, so we need to be seeing precision, accuracy, as much feedback of what's happening as possible, and I don't think you really get that, or it feels very choppy at least, so I think there's some work to be done there. I think navigation of the menus as well also needs a lot of work. So there are some visual cleanups that they stay. I haven't actually seen them myself, and the UI still doesn't feel very intuitive. The menus feel, if I'm being honest, like crap. There's a lot of work that needs doing. They feel dull. There's a lot of empty space still. And moving between the open season, whatever it's called, in career mode, you still have to add cars to your garages, or if you don't want to do that, it's very difficult to move around the available cars. I'm not asking for content manager or anything like that. I don't think, as we move into this new game and everything's a lot cleaner, I'd like to see it all in-house, but even if they get some of the people in from content manager or something like that, everything there, so it feels so it feels so purposeful, whereas these menus just don't. So that's how I'd kind of sum it up. It just doesn't feel very purposeful. But saying that, it is early access, and I'd rather see the changes on the track and on the feel of the cars and on force feedback, physics, things like that, rather than the menus. They can come later. But if you are just starting out, it doesn't feel very intuitive. So the last thing I'll discuss in this video today is the audio. So update 0.4 brings some more clear improvements to the audio side of ACE, and overall I think it feels like it's a step in the right direction, but it isn't without its own issues. So the biggest disappointment is the SF25, the new F1 car, and to be honest, it doesn't feel great. The engine note feels kind of flat, and I do think it's just been completely copied from the 2017 Ferrari F1 car and the original Assetto Corsa. So for such a big car in the update, which is a new car in the update, I didn't actually cover that. It's hard to ignore, especially when engine sound is a massive part of immersion. So outside of that, there are positives. They've stated the turbo behaviour is more convincing. Boost, RPM and drivetrain sounds feels more alive than before. Transmission audio backfires, turbo hiss and environmental effects like scraping and rain all adds to the sense of mechanical presence. You can tell there's been a lot of work put into this to make the cars feel a lot more physical, less sterile and a bit more immersive. So while the SF25 audio is a big letdown and it feels very outdated, the overall direction again is positive, and they need to keep making these small changes to make the cars feel a lot better, a lot more alive, and then hopefully when the open world comes out, which is what I think a lot of people are waiting for, the game will be in a really good state. We just won this race, as you can see. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it if you got this far. Thank you very much. Have a good one. Subscribe, like, all of that. It's a good review. It's a good update. I really like Assetto Corsa EVO. You should buy it. Goodbye.